Hi, everyone. Thank you for listening to the Taste of Transformation podcast. If you like what you hear, please share with your friends and family, and don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and all podcast platforms at Taste of Transformation for more episodes like this. If you'd like to be a guest on our podcast or know of someone who would be a good guest, please reach out to us at tasteoftransformation@gmail.com. Enjoy this episode. Hi, I'm Charles Lewis, and welcome to Taste of Transformation. Our show interviews individuals impacted by the criminal legal system who have successfully changed their lives. During the show, they share their stories of challenges and triumphs, discuss their transformative journey, and provide insights on how others can achieve transformation. And we do this while enjoying some of our favorite prison meals. My guest today is Michael J. Love. He is the co-producer, an educator and facilitator, a chaplain, a counselor, and a tractor-trailer driver, as well as bus driver. But for me, most importantly, he is my father, my mentor, and like I said, he is also co-producer of Taste of Transformation. Welcome, Mr. Michael J. Love.
Well, thank you, Brother Charles. I'm glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Glad you were able to be here. Before we dive into your story,
yes,
we're going to dive into the food. So I asked you, gave you a call and was like, what should I cook? Which was one of your favorite meals. And you said?
Jack Maack, fried Jack Maack.
Fried Jack Maack and Doritos and some nachos. So let's talk about two things. Number one, why the Jack Maack? Why is that one of your favorite meals? And then we're going to the importance of sharing a meal together. And then more so the importance of us sharing a meal together. And let's talk about that story as well.
Well, I remember I never heard of Jack Maack prior to my going upstate to prison.
Yeah.
And the idea, even octopus, that was real strange, even stranger. Who eat octopus?
Yeah.
But these are the staples of the prison diet in terms of those who go to commissary or get packages from the streets. So when someone first made me some Jack Maack, I fell in love with it. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't part of the prison culinary agenda, or what they call mess hall food.
Yeah.
But it was a treat, something to look forward to. And men often break bread, just like they do in society, because the prison environment is a microcosm of the larger society. So just like people in society break bread together and fellowship, that continues unabated in prison. And that's how relationships are often fostered and reinforced. So just like with me and you cooked for us, Camarade, and I would cook. We would all take turns cooking. And we would just enjoy eating and sitting down and talking. How was your day? What did you do today? What was it like? Over a plate of rice, Jack Maack and beans.
Yeah. Yo, Jack Maack was so we used to make Jack Maack in different ways.
Yes.
But the fried Jack Maack was like always. It was a treat. It was always a treat. So bite into it. Let me know what you think.
It's been years since I had the opportunity to try this. I've been home 6 years and 10 months now. So I haven't had Jack Maack in at least that long.
So I use the same ingredients that we would use when we were locked up.
Yes. Fully reminiscence. It brings me back. What do they call it? Nostalgia? Mm-hmm. Nostalgic moment with every bite.
You specifically said you wanted it with nachos. Why with nachos?
Well, you didn't do it the way I was telling you.
Oh, I asked you. How did you want it?
You're supposed to crush it up and put it in the batter.
Okay.
But it's all right. Still tastes very delicious.
I did the battered one with Ernest Henry. I battered it, the Jack Maack with the nachos, and then read it with Ernest Henry.
Did you like it?
Oh, yeah. He said it tasted just like how it was when we was locked up.
So we're not we're not extolling this as a virtue of the prison diet, right?
Right.
But this was very important in our relationships, the way we might end the day or begin a day, and with a good meal together as brothers, even while subjected to conditions of radical incarceration.
So let's dive. I've been looking forward to this interview. For me, it doesn't even really feel too much like an interview. We've known each other since 2012.
Yes, exactly.
We met, and just remained in contact and remained close with each other from 2012 up until now. So it doesn't even really feel like an interview. It feels like home.
Yes,
it feels like home. I know your story, but for those of our audience who doesn't, let's talk about who Michael Love was, your backstory, and who you are now.
Yeah, so Michael Love was a scoundrel. And as a scoundrel, I mean a person who didn't conform, who was rebellious to everything without even understanding why he was rebelling, and who sought freedom. My own definition of freedom. I used to believe that real freedom was doing what I want to do, going where I want to go, and saying what I want to say. And when you think about it, that's not real freedom. I think now that real freedom is doing what you was born to do. You know, a bird, when you see a bird flying, that bird is doing exactly what he was born to do. So even in the prison yard, and I see seagulls navigating majestically on the winds above us, wishing I could be a seagull to fly out of here. But that seagull is doing exactly what he was born to do. If he doesn't properly observe the laws of flight, you know what I'm saying, he's going to suffer catastrophic injuries, right? So mine is like that, this rebellious life since the age of 13. First I was truant, didn't want to hang out in school, always wanted to be exploring different places. Then from truancy to running away from home, I became a chronic runaway. And before you know it, they started placing me in division for youth facilities in New York City. And then New York State. New York City was Spofford Youth Detention Center. And then because I was in getting it, before you know it, I was upstate. And unfortunately, it transitioned me into a very institutionalized lifestyle because I just kept graduating. So, I went from running away, became progressive in my offending nature, and then from running away to start doing armed robberies. Before I started stealing cars. And then from stealing cars to doing armed robberies. So before you know it, from division for the youth facility to Rikers Island, in and out of Rikers Island for years. And then before you know it, I caught the big one and did 7.5 years upstate for my first time for first-degree robbery. Came home for 18 months, came back with another charge of armed robbery. And this time I was sentenced to 50 to 100 years. So lights out. Game over.
Yeah.
And I never thought I could get time like that because I didn't kill or hurt nobody. But apparently the state was tired of this rebellious child, And so at the age of 33 years old, I found myself upstate, starting 50 to 100 years. And that was the first time in my life that I was broken. I never was broken before. And then my brokenness became the opportunity for change.
When you say you were broken, what does that mean?
Broken of my self-will to do what I want to do. Because I see that doing what I wanted to do did not amount to anything. It was quite futile, It didn't amount to anything. In fact, if anything, I became a social liability. I became a shame to my parents. And I became an embarrassment to my whole family, And my mother was around other parents who talk about their son, the doctor, the teacher. My mother couldn't talk about me like that. A son should be a mother's and a father's pride and joy. And unfortunately, I robbed my parents of the right to have a son that they could brag about. But in my self-serving pursuits, to be a lawless person or even criminal-minded, in my opinion, is to be narcissistic. Because you're not really considering anyone else's feelings or how your behavior is affecting anyone else. You're just doing what you want to do. And that's the height of narcissism.
So what was it that broke you? Because you said that it was during that time when they originally sentenced you to 50 to 100 years.
Yeah.
Eventually they reduced that. What broke you? And what did that brokenness look like?
And number one, what broke me was that time.
Yeah. Yo, so, all right. So let's talk about that real quick, because the story of how the judge sentenced you and why the judge sentenced you, right? Because I think people need to understand who Michael Love was then and why the judge sentenced you to 50 to 100.
The judge that sentenced me, his name was Harold J. Rothwax. The Honorable Harold J. Rothwax. He was presiding in the Manhattan Supreme Court. And I was very rebellious with him in the courtroom. It's particularly on sentencing day when they call adjudicating you. So he was saying that he has no compunction with giving me all this time because I was demonstrated I had no respect for authority or law and no compunction with doing wrong. So I used that in my talking points, what they call allocution, when you speak to the courts, to tell them, so that picture behind you of the white justice, that's an accurate picture. It depicts what the system is about. I said, your justice don't have blindfolds on. I said, your justice scale is not balanced. You know what I'm saying? Your justice got a sword defending herself. And I said, this represents what you're about. In other words, rather than be a man and deal with the full implications and the weight of my terrible misguided choices, I saw, like a lot of brothers, to scapegoat somebody, to make myself a victim. Can you imagine that?
So he was being quite arrogant to the judge.
Probably my supremely arrogant moment at that point. Okay. To my own chagrin, though. Right. To my own detriment, because the judge gave me more time than the statute recognized. He had the last say. So I walked from the courtroom back to the bullpen defiantly. What they gave me? Yeah, man, they gave me 1,500. They found me guilty. I got 1,500 years, no problem. But it was a problem. But it didn't begin to become a problem or take root in my heart until maybe when I was on my way upstate. You know what I mean? And knowing that I probably would have to die in prison. That's what it seems like to me. So in that I might have to die in prison, I was forced to look at my past, my choices, and admit that my mother didn't raise me to be a scoundrel. She didn't raise me to be a thug. When she felt me in her womb, she carried me for 9 months, she never had hopes that I would be something like that. That she had great aspirations for me as a son. And I betrayed that on every level. So when you engaging in those moments of intense critical introspection, you see yourself, man. And that's why, as you know, Sonny Boy, some guys lose their mind. They got to get medicated. They got to get Thorazine. They in special blocks. They can't function. You know what I'm saying? And who knows? Maybe I was teetering on that. You know what I'm saying? But what helped me was I ran to Jesus. That's what helped me. I ran to Jesus.
So when
I tapped out.
You were forced.
You were forced, brother.
Yeah. So, all right. So the judge sentenced you to 50, 100 to 100.
Yes.
But eventually they knocked it down to 25.
They did. Praise the living God. Hallelujah.
25 to life. I guess he just wanted to teach you a lesson because you.
I was a defiant defendant. That's why.
He was quite arrogant.
Yeah.
I remember the first time you told me the story, and you was like, when the judge said, "I'm not going to have mercy on you," and you was like,
"I don't need your mercy.
I don't need your mercy."
And my mother told me later. She said, when I heard you said that, she said, I wanted to jump up and say, "Your Honor, don't listen to that fool. I'm pleading for mercy on his behalf." Oh, God.
You told the man who actually has mercy in his hand that you didn't need his mercy. So, when and how did you begin to make the genuine steps towards changing?
It was reaching out to God and getting in the Bible. When I was in my cell became a monastery of intellectual and spiritual development. That when I opened that book, before it didn't make sense to me, but now I open the book, I open it with a pure heart, with a desperate heart. I knew that there was something in here for me. I didn't know exactly what it was, but I knew there was something based on what my mother was telling me all these years, based on my spouse at the time, Sylvia, suggesting, you need to read that, And I found when I started reading the book, those words became alive. It raised off the page. It made sense. It crystallized for me. And the more I read it, the more I had an integrated view of the scriptures and its application in my life, And I found there was hope. There was hope and purpose for me,
You said something that I think is key for a lot of people who wanted to change, it was, you said you became desperate. I know, like, that's what it was for me. Like,
Yes.
in the time of, there was something inside of me. There was like this pain that knew, that something has to change, right? That desperation. Would you say that it is the key component, or like one of, if not the first step to change, like radical transformation?
I think brokenness, being broken of your misguided will is the first step, and I think desperation is the need to do something about it. Because I had a good look at myself, and I didn't like what I saw. It was an ego-shattering moment, you know what I'm saying? And I didn't like what I saw. I didn't like what I'd become. And it was hard for me to look in my mother's eyes, knowing that I was like a scourge to her, And yet, here this woman was, wherever facility or institution they had me in, here this woman was coming, loving me no matter what, not judging me. Just believing, just telling me you can do better. That kind of love, the love of Christ, was in my mom's. So brokenness is a gift, in my opinion. It's a gift because for men and women who can really get it, it properly positions you to move in a new direction. You know what I'm saying? The process of examining yourself is painful.
Yeah, I was going to say,
that's mortifying.
Why didn't you run away from it? Because I think that everybody, whether you're incarcerated, you're not incarcerated, if there's something about yourself that you don't like, you see it first before other people can see it. But I think a lot of people run away from it.
Well, I think
I
think my whole life was based on running from it. You know what I'm saying? I think that when you're born, that life calls you to greater possibilities, particularly since God made you. You know what I'm saying? That we're called into greater possibilities, but we shirk the responsibility of embracing those possibilities. Maybe we're afraid. I don't know what it is. But for me, I shirked that, and I've been running all my life. Running from my responsibilities as a father to my children, running as a responsibility to as a son to my parents, running as a responsibility to my siblings, to my community. So all my life, and now in this one epic moment, this defining moment, you know what I'm saying, where I had the gift of astounding clarity, and I can see what it is that I despise, the things in myself that I despise.
So how long did you wrestle with that feeling of like despising who you were, and then how long did it take for you to get to the point of like, okay, I don't like who I am. I'm going to forgive myself for being that person, so that you can move
So you know
on.
what? I'm not sure if wrestling is a good term that described that for me, because for me it was a coming to terms with things. You know what I mean? And I didn't wrestle against that. I just accepted that, and in a very calculating and pragmatic way,
Explain.
maybe dry way. You know what I'm saying? In other words, you're a failure. You're pathetic. That's what you were. That's your legacy. And no man can leave that kind of legacy. You know what I'm saying? What are you going to do about that? So for me, my hope was in Christ, to know that what he promised, what he offered, and I believed him. I took him at his word. I believed that he could change me, because I didn't know how to change myself. I know it begins with some basic steps, and maybe our first few steps are inadequate, and maybe not only inadequate, but maybe a bit challenging. You know what I mean? Like an infant walking on feeble legs, But I knew that I believed what God said, and I know that he could change me, and I believe, man, there was hope in that empowered me, that gave me a sense of purpose and direction, that I am challenged to locate the right words to articulate. You know what I'm saying? But it imbued me with, I just felt like I could do anything, even while confronted with 50 to life.
So it sounds like the first thing that you had to do was be completely honest with yourself and accept the fact, like, yo, for me, I said, I'm not a man. Like, I literally looked in the mirror. I remember going to the bathroom, and I looked in the mirror and I asked myself, do you like who you see? And I stared at myself for probably like 10, 15 seconds before I could, answer that question. And I looked myself in the eye, and I was just like, I really don't like this person that I'm seeing.
That's a good place to be. That's a good start. It's a pivotal point. It's a life-defining point, because if you could continue to like the way you are, then something is wrong. That means your psychosis go much deeper than even the clinicians are able to acknowledge. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But if you get to a point where you realize that you don't like yourself, to me, that's a glimpse of humanity. That's a glimpse of sanity. You know what I'm saying? Starting to emerge. You know, and prison, as you know, it's a culture of insanity. It complements and reinforces that condition. So insanity is glamorized and accepted in the culture of prison. And men are accustomed to it. But that's why those same men, when they see a man among them, they'll walk head and shoulders in sanity and with convictions that will make them virtuous, you know what I'm saying? They have to come to respect them. That's been my respect. So that's been my experience, I mean. So as I began to grow and change and deal with myself, it soon became obvious that I needed to help others to do the same thing, you know.
So, smooth transition.
Segue, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I know you're big on seeing men make an authentic change.
Yes, reclamation. I call it reclamation of authentic manhood, authentic masculinity.
Why is that important for you?
Because our society, especially our communities, need men desperately. And I'm not talking about males. I'm not talking about simply somebody who has a male biology. I'm not talking about someone who thinks, well, he just calls himself a man. When I look at man, the way God meant in the Bible, and man epitomizes God. You know what I'm saying? That God, his manhood is authenticated and legitimized by what God has called him into. God made him to be a man. So our society, in my opinion, is desperate for men because we have so many people who call themselves men, but they don't know what it means to be a man. Some people think that to be a man is to be a gangster and to be a player. And you can't, if to be a man is a virtue, then trying to define manhood by vice is a contradiction, you know what I'm saying, of the poorest levels, you know what I'm saying?
So what's your definition of a man?
I think living as God has called him to live. But I know everybody's not going to get that, and that's fine. So everybody's not going to be a Christian, you know, so I'm cool with that. But there's people who I know who are not Christians, you know what I'm saying, who live lives that's defined by virtue. So a man is responsible. You know what I'm saying? He has those kind of virtues like honesty, integrity, those kind of virtues like caring about people in his community. He doesn't find refuge in an apathetic heart. You know what I'm saying? He doesn't find refuge or solace in being indifferent and being cold and calculating toward people. And even more importantly, he doesn't cannot casually victimize anyone else. Because when I see you, I see that we're joined together in our struggle, you know what I'm saying? That we are woven together by the same fabric of life existentially and sociologically, you know what I'm saying? So when I see you, you're not my enemy. You know, we have a shared goal. You know, we have places that we have to go together. Maybe some places we can't go together. But as men, we need men who could be fathers to their children. We need men who know how to be a good husband to their spouse. You know, the idea of marriage in our communities has become, I don't know if you know, irrelevant and obsolete for this generation. You know, they don't see the point of it. I'm saying, but when you study cultures abroad, you know what I'm saying, even ancient cultures, they always understood how foundational a marriage and family was. But we, as sophisticated as we might be in terms of our technology, in terms of what we know, we've become what's the word? Dull-minded about these kind of things. You know, so I think that our society, our community, men who are willing to stand up and be men, and who are willing to be vulnerable. Because to me, being a man is willing to be vulnerable too. I think that we have a lot of men who brothers who masquerade as men, and who might look like they're doing well, but when you put them under the microscope, man, you'll see that they're not doing so well. So we need to let men know it's all right to be men, and help them to achieve that. So in prison, I mentored and discipled many men. And I still, as you know, I still continue to do that because I want to see the brothers be the best version of themselves. You know what I'm saying?
We're gonna talk about you mentoring, but I want to touch on something that you said that I think it's very important, and it's not. I didn't learn it in school, and it's not really taught in prison as far as like a curriculum, like when you got to go to like vocations and things of that nature. men live by virtues. Another word for virtues is values, and not basing our lives off of feelings, not basing our actions off of feelings. Let's talk about the importance of living a life based off of virtues and values, and why that is being a man, and coming from your background of being a Christian, why that is exactly how God shows us that that's how we're supposed to live. The importance of virtues and values for you, being the source of being a man. Speak more to that.
Well, when you talk about virtue, you're really talking about moral excellence. And a lot of us not moral excellent, but that's what we're really talking about. And to me, if our manhood doesn't manifest or demonstrate that, then it becomes highly suspect, because either I'm an asset or my liability. And if I'm going to leave a legacy by which my posterity can build on, right? And that's what men do, all right? We leave legacies. But one thing about legacy is, whether you're leaving a good legacy or a bad legacy, you're going to leave a legacy. There's no way to live and not leave a legacy. So my legacy was severely embarrassing. As you know, it was shameful, like a lot of brothers. But in terms of values, the question is, how does those values serve and inform my life? And how does my values build up my family and my community? If my values is not doing that, but my values makes me a liability, if it makes me, if it subtracts severely from what I think is a manhood, you know what I'm saying, then we have to look at why. You know what I'm saying? Because there's this misconception about what's a man. And, there's a lot of different philosophies throughout the ages that people attempt to define what makes a man a man. Martin Luther King said the true measure of a man is the way he stands in times of controversy, right? Some people might say different. So I think that, I know, like for me, as a husband to my wife, part of being a man is for me to be able to hear her, get out the way to hear what she has to say. Even if I don't agree with it, you know what I'm saying, but that she feels safe enough to share that, and for me to be sensitive in my response. Because men, I think that we suffer from being emotionally disconnected in some ways, so we fail to properly connect with our spouses because we're aloof. Part of being a man in our world is to be aloof. The man who wrote The Pedagogy of the Oppressed, I think his name is Paulo Freire, he's a Brazilian educator, he said something that I never forgot. I read that book. He said, historically, and I paraphrase, historically, it's always without exception that when those who are oppressed rise to become liberated, that now that they're empowered, they become liberated, that they wind up becoming sub-oppressors. He said, because their existential template for being a man is to be an oppressor.
Right.
Because that's all they know. So we have to revisit, what is that makes us a man? You know what I'm saying? Now, how does that definition of manhood within the social context of our life, how does it serve our families and our community? I remember reading a book by Dr. Naim Akbar, called Miseducation, from Miseducation to Education. But he was taking a play on the book from Carter G. Woodson, Miseducation of the Negro. And he was saying, from miseducation to education, he said, when we be properly educated, then now we can properly live. And as men, he said, men build institutions. Little boys don't. They just play and want to have fun all the time. He makes a distinction between the male, the boy, and the man. And he says, as a male, we are nothing more than the sum of our biological entity, as we say, just some of our biology. But as a boy, he said, now you learn a little discipline and you learn to be slick. But you're still intrigued and fascinated with toys. You know what I'm saying? You get your bicycle. Hey, little girl, you want to ride on my bike? You know what I'm saying? And then when you grow up, now you got a car. Hey, girl, you want to ride with my car? It's the same thing, right? He said, but when you reach to the manhood, he said, which most of us don't, now you live in a way where it's a self-sacrificial life, a life that's completely devoted to building family and community and to sustaining both. Because you realize that for your family to do well, they have to have an environment or community that supports them. So you can't raise your family in your community without being involved in making your environment that you're raising your family a better place. So men build institutions, men take charge, men have invested interest in their community, and we don't hang on the skirts of our women.
So, because values and virtues are so important to being a man, what would you say, and if you have to take like time to think about it, what would you say is the one value that every man should take hold of when he's trying to turn his life around?
Again, my response is subjective because, my experience. But for me, it's Jesus, man. He's the architecture of all this for me. You know what I'm saying? I believe what the Bible says, and he's the one that's changed my heart, my attitude, the way I look at the world around me, my worldview. He's the one that ordered my steps. His word is a lamp unto my feet. And I felt like through him, I became a man. You know what I'm saying? Now, some people might say, well, Mike, that's your experience. And I'm saying, I'm going to do it through a lot. That's fine. That's fine. But just let's see the fruit of your manhood, and let's see some consistency of it. Because often I watch men who simply veil their pathologies through religion. You know what I'm saying? They hide them. In other words, they don't grow, they don't change, but they go to church all the time. You know what I'm saying? They go to the masjid all the time, and they haven't changed. They're still problematic. They're still in the state of arrested development. They're still continue to be a liability to their family and community because they're not really dealing with the issues. And men, to me, a man deals with his issue. A man admits where he's wrong, and a man do something about it. And he's not comfortable with doing wrong over and over and over again. When he realizes that he's wrong, he turns his back on that, and he doesn't repeat that.
Okay. And so you started the men's discipleship Bible study in your home, and you have anywhere from 28 to 30 guys that come there. How did you do that, and what is the fellowship about?
So it's called Men's Discipleship Bible Study. Is to build disciples, not converts.
What's the difference?
People just converting or just looking to lead people to the Lord and all like that. Now, so by the time you get to that level, you've already given your life to the Lord, and now you simply want to know what it means to walk as a disciple of Christ. Every person's walk is a little different because there's nuances and different colors of our faith, right? But there's some fundamental tenets that we have to adhere to. So the idea is to see what the Word says and then transplant the Word to our reality and live that and conform to the Word. The Bible says, be not conformed to the world, but be transformed by the renewing of our mind. And that's good because our mind is problematic. That's the problem. How we think. What the Bible says, as a man thinketh in Proverbs, so is he.
So is he.
You know what I'm saying? So our thinking makes us a liability or makes us an asset, right? So if I think that I'm a player, I'm going to act like a player. If I think I'm slick, I'm going to act like I'm slick. If I think that I'm a thug and nobody can do nothing to me, I'm going to act like a thug. So my thinking is my biggest problem, and that's why Apostle Paul in Romans 12 talk about, it's your reasonable service to be transformed. So the idea is to get men to find out how that word, because like I say, it deals with people differently. How does this word deal with you? The word says this. Let's clarify what it means. And once we clarify it, now we can contextualize it in a very personal and a very convicting kind of way for that person. So the brothers in the Bible study, they're men from different walks of life. Even as you know, Tom Angel, he's a public defender in Poughkeepsie office, and he comes to our Bible study. We got Bruce, retired correctional officer who at one time hated blacks and Latinos with a passion from Green Haven. You know what I'm saying? He comes to Bible study. And he considered me a mentor. So God just was telling me to do this for a while, brother. You asked how did I start this. God was telling me that I was shirking it. I was procrastinating. Then one time he got me in the corner where I couldn't do it anymore. So I'm glad I listened to him because I see the fruit of, as always, what God calls you to do. And these men are special because after we had that Bible study, you know what we have after that, right?
Food.
They had the big meal. We have the big throwdown. Because that's another level of fellowship and intimacy, because now when brothers are eating together, they break off and they talk. Yo, man, I know you lived over here. Or yo, brother, what you meant when you said that? What do you think about that scripture? You know what I'm saying? You see conversations all over my home or either in Bruce's home breaking off based on a shared experience. And I count it an awesome privilege, and I'm humbled by it, that these men are showing up every 2 weeks for this. And that they lean forward into the word and ask questions. Because to me, that's what Bible study is. You should be able to ask questions. If you're not going to ask, you can't ask questions. And the group answers the questions, not Michael. Because I believe that everybody know that word so they can answer. If they can't, then I'll answer it. But I just mostly facilitate, and all the time I become instructional if I'm dealing with a doctrinal issue. That's all.
It was a scripture that you brought up that I think it's very important. Be transformed by the renewing of your mind.
And to finish it, and don't be conformed to the world.
And don't be conformed to the world. But let's talk about, I want to dive deeper into the transforming of your mind to become a different person. What was that process like for you?
That's a good question, man. I like that question.
I want to dive into that because I think we hear it all the time, right? Oh, be transformed by the renewing of your mind. That's a pretty common scripture. But it's like, how do you apply that? And what does it look like? So what did that look like for you?
So I think that one has to be vigilant in the pursuit of doing that. He can't be lackadaisical. He can't be soft-shoeing about it. He has to be very vigilant about these kind of things. Because the Bible says, let this mind be in Christ also be in you. Right? So that mind that was in Christ has to be in me. So it behooves me to ask the question, what was the mind of Christ? You know what I'm saying? And the mind of Christ, man, that he loves, that he wants the best for his people. You know what I'm saying? That he made us with a purpose. And I'm saying that we was made not for our purpose, but for his purpose. You know, so for me, the word was what washed my mind. You know what I'm saying, what changed me. The more I read, I began to find that I had to agree with the principles. And that when I staked my life or established my life on those principles, I began to see results. You know what I'm saying? Significant results. And at the same time, the antithetical encounter of who I am as a man of God and who the world is. So now when I deal with people who are not Christians or who are not in the world, I don't deal with them disparagingly. I don't look down on them because I think Christians that do that, I think they miss the gospel. That's not the gospel. That's not the message. We was once like that, Paul says in Titus. Don't forget that you was this man of man too. You was once a thief, or you was once a liar. Now that you've been saved, you're going to act like you don't understand what this was about. You know, we're not called to judge that. We're called to demonstrate what Christ looked like, his grace, man. And that means being long-suffering with people. That means being patient, being kind. The very thing that we're not inclined to do. And, you know, I can't always pull that off my own, right? So I need to see him, and so I need to be in my moment of intimacy with prayer with him. I need him to fill me up so I can do those things, because on my own, I'm just incapable of producing those kind of virtues, those kind of what the Bible called the fruit of the Spirit. You know what I'm saying? Love is long-suffering, kind.
So it sounds like you're saying some of the tools that you use to begin that transformation of your mind was, first, it was a dire hunger. But then you had to read. One of the things you said was you started reading about like the principles of the Bible, and then you started applying those principles. And I'm really trying to dive deep into this.
I want you to,
because I don't think that most people understand the steps, what steps that they can take to change their mind. And so let's talk about reading about the principles, like changing your principles.
There's a problem with that term. Okay, it falsely presumes that I actually take full responsibility for the conducting the change on my own, and I can't admit. My change is a result of me being totally submitted to him. And he wonderfully facilitates the changes in my heart. He gives me a new heart. The word Psalm says, create in me a clean heart, O Lord, and renew a right spirit in me. That he does the work. But I have the primary responsibility of learning how to submit to that. You know what I'm saying? And learning how to submit to him. So learning how to submit to him, the Bible says he's the word, that he's life, right? That he's the author and finisher of all my faith. That he's the Alpha and Omega. So learning how to submit to that, because compared to him, I'm really nothing, but through whom I am, you know what I mean? And when I get that, then I take on the mind of Christ, the heart of Christ, and now I want to pass that on to others. I can never act like I've fully arrived to that level. Because I'm arrived up there, I got that. No, it's an ongoing process, an ongoing work. Because as you know, you're always going to encounter your own personal deficits. You know what I'm saying? And that encounter with those deficits are simply an opportunity for you to work out your salvation with fear and trembling. But in the process, knowing that we're called to serve. I'm a wounded healer. I'm called to serve, that no suffering of any person shouldn't be strange to me. If I'm available, if I'm plugged in, I can make a difference. And there's going to be some things I meet that I'm going to feel powerless to do anything about. But my power is in praying, you know what I'm saying, and how to deal with it. There's some things in our life, man, that we see, man, that we would like to make a difference and help resolve, and it just might be beyond us, might be out of our debt. I'm saying, but because of whom we represent, whom we belong to, that can change. God can do something with that.
So for you, submitting to your higher power is the first step.
Well, to me, I understand the politically correct context of that word, but to me, submitting specifically to Jesus is the highest step. Not just higher power, but to Jesus for me. It's personal. It's a personal relationship. So I dare not objectify him with those kind of terms, because that's like you saying it's submitting to the mother. No, it's your mom's. That's your mom. You have a personal, real experience with her. You know what I'm saying, and that relationship that you have with her is what impacts your life and influences you in some kind of way, even if it was good experience or bad experience. So for me, it's recognizing what's the biggest problem was me. You know what I mean? That was my biggest problem. Some people say, yeah, but what about racism? Well, racism is there. There's all kind of these kind of ills in our society, you know what I'm saying? They're prevalent. It's all around us. But the biggest problem out of all that was me. Because even when subjected and dealing with the challenges of racism in our time, I still have to deal with this buster here. You know what I'm saying? I still got to deal with me, because Charles Swindoll said it best this way. He said, I am fully persuaded that life is 90% what happens to you and 10% what happens to you and 90% of how you respond to what happens to you. So in other words, things are going to happen. But your character, how your character is revealed, is determined how you respond to those unjust and those ugly things that has happened to you. Even Proverbs says that even a wise man is counted, even a fool is counted wise when he holds his peace, right? So life is not fair all the time, you know what I'm saying? And when I was living life the way I used to live, I wasn't fair. I was victimizing people. I was taking their property. I didn't have the right. But grace. Not only through the Lord, but through people in humanity, people who didn't write me off and probably should have wrote me off. And because they didn't write me off, I was able to accomplish some things. So even in prison, just change, talking about, and getting this and expanding my horizons came through critical education. Got my GED, right? Then I'm going to get my bachelor's degree from Marist College. Then when I got my master's of professional studies from New York Theological Seminary, and then became an adjunct instructor teaching college courses, and that's how I met you. When I was your college professor.
And so another critical step in transformation for you was education.
Oh, yeah.
Talk about that.
Yeah.
Why is that so important when wanting to become a different person and a better person?
Well, I always felt that education is a tool that simply increases your opportunities. You know what I'm saying? And I think that everyone should be committed to learning. You know what I'm saying, on some level. Because in addition to serving God, we was made to continue to learn to grow. But too often we get to places in our life where we are not growing anymore. You know, it's almost like that's a bygone era. Now, even once we get our degrees, we're not reading and studying as much, you know what I'm saying? Like it's a bygone era. But that's because we reach a static point in our life when we need to get back to being more mobile. You know what I'm saying? You know, moving forward, not being so static and suffering what I call intellectual and moral paralysis as a result of the level of comfort, busyness of life that we might be contending with. You know what I mean?
I remember when you went in to prison, you didn't have your high school.
I was an 8th grade dropout. I never made it to high school.
And then you left with your master's in theology. And that took a lot of discipline, especially in like a Maack.
Especially something I never had in my life before.
It took a lot of discipline. So education, discipline. You said continuing. One of the things that you just spoke about was continuing in education.
Yes.
I think it's very important, whether it's formally or informally. For me, I chose to go about it in a more informal
I agree.
way.
They're both important, yes.
But learning, like reading, studying,
That's discipline.
That's a discipline. But it does also change your mind because it opens your mind to different things. It helps you to see the world in a different view.
Well, you know, as a state prisoner, books became so important to me, man. Books became my way out of prison. I'm not talking about any books either. I'm talking about books that challenged me critically, you know what I'm saying, cognitively, you know what I'm saying, the books that put me up against the wall. One of my favorite books that probably I can name a lot of books that had an impact on me, but there's this book called Half the Sky, and I think it's by Cheryl Woodon and her husband, Nicholas Kristof. So it's called Half the Sky, and the subtitle is Turning Oppression for Women into Liberation. I remember when I was reading that book, sometimes I would slam it down because I was so frustrated by what men was doing to women and children.
Yeah, it made me
all
cry.
across the world.
Right.
It was a struggle to get through it. But the good part about the book, what I love the best about it, and it has become a movement. I don't know if you know that. You can go Google that. They got documented. It's become an incredible movement. But what I like about the book is how ordinary people stepped in from different countries, different places, to help these women who thought they was powerless, who thought they didn't have no future, to move forward. Ordinary. Even young girls as young as 16 and 17 years old was in New Jersey starting off organization helping these women. So the term half the sky is taken from an Asian proverb that says women are the other half of the sky. And I remember a guy said in that book, he said, if we look at women for what they are, he said women just might have something more to offer than just their vaginas. Because they're the other half of our sky, and without them, what are we?
So would you say that not only that book, but books in general help to change your perspective
like
about
Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. He was a psychologist, and he was in the German prison camp under Hitler for like 3 years. And his basic premise of that book is that every choice, everything could be taken away from a man except one thing. And that's the choice and attitude by which he chose to respond to his situation. They can't take that away. So these books, man, just really helped open my perspective about the world around me and this global humanity that I was a part of, and made me realize that when I was making choices as a lawless, rebellious person, that I was in a very tiny part of life, and I had no access to life. I had embraced a life of decadence, like The Walking Dead, like the zombie.
Yeah. I find that most of the people who I talk to who are successful in their lives are readers.
Yeah.
They read. And people who tend not to read tend not to be that successful.
Or that deep.
And I make it a point to read at least, at minimum, 2 books a month, at minimum. My goal is 4.
That's good.
I very rarely get to 4.
You know what they said about a black man, right?
Yeah. Oh, if you want to if you want to hide something, like put it in a book. Yeah.
So I'm sure that's probably a misnomer, probably on some level. I'm saying it's probably not just a black man, it's probably anybody. It applies to anybody who's not reading.
Right.
But for some reason they just make it about the black man, you know what I'm saying?
But there's still some truth.
There's some truth.
Still some truth in that.
And I find that I can name a lot of books that really touch me, like Makes Me Want to Holler by Nathan McCall. Did you ever read that book?
I haven't read that one yet, no.
Yeah, so he was a brother who did 7 years. He was born in Virginia, lived in projects. Streets got a hold of him. He wound up doing 7 years for armed robbery, but when he was in prison, he started stepping to the old-timers who he thought that was wise and educated. And based on the conversation that he had with them and the books they gave him to read, guess what? He got out, went to college, became a journalist. You got to know those guys because he became a journalist and became a journalist. He was for the Atlantic Constitution.
Yeah,
then
I didn't read his book.
Get to the Washington Post.
Right.
Became a top journal, like one of the top journalists in the country. From that's transformation. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. How you get out of that and get to this level? Mm-hmm. I think when you start making right decisions and responsible decisions, that's just how it goes. You never know where life is going to take you. It's going to take you somewhere because you're living a life that's not static, free from being static. It's moving forward. We're living in a turned direction of our lives. And as we learn the turned direction of our lives, we position ourselves for wonderful and incredible things that happen to us. You know what I mean? But if we're living the life of a scoundrel, you know how that goes.
Yeah. There's this.
We rob ourselves. I was in jail for armed robbery, but I was essentially and ultimately robbing myself as well as my family and my communities.
Yeah, I agree. So we spoke about the tools that you use in your life to help you transform and change. And clearly they work. You're not out there stealing cars, robbing folks. You're married. You have a successful marriage. You have a successful business with the podcast. A homeowner.
Who ever thought?
But I know there are some challenges. Like, I just know you personally, that there have been some challenges along the way. What were and what continues to be some of the challenges that you face as a transformed man? Talk about those briefly and how you try to combat it.
So in terms of employment, as you know, every time we apply for a job, we always have to admit our past and deal with that and be judged by that. As you know, I applied for a job during the COVID epidemic when it first started with a company in Newburgh, a big company, and they discriminated against me, as you know, because of my record. So I let it fly. I let it fly the first time. But then they made a mistake of calling me back because they forgot they discriminated against me. And this time when they did it again, I filed a lawsuit and I won. I got money coming to me. So I learned that in prison. I was going to law library. Part of my preparing for my freedom was I would go to law library and learn about this. It's called Article 28. 23A, I'm sorry, Article 23A, which deals with it. You can't discriminate against a person. So I had to submit my complaint to the Human Rights Division in New York State, which is New York's have some very liberal laws. And if a lot of guys start doing this, when they're discriminated, rather it's for housing, rather it's for aging, rather it's for employment, they would be surprised of not only the money they can get, right, but also the kind of difference they would make where these companies and these corporations don't so freely discriminate against us. So anytime I apply for a job, I always have to deal with that, and that's always a problem for me. Like, I'm applying for another job now, and I got to deal with this thing again. So no matter what, I can't get away from it. But Kathy Hochul just, as you know, signed into law the Clean Slate Act, which is designed to seal our records after we've been out, I think, for 8 years, trouble-free, for 8 years, you know what I'm saying? So I look forward to that. I haven't been out 8 years yet, but knowing in about 2 years I will be able, or rather 1.5 years, I'll be able to fall up under the Clean Slate Act. So that's the one problem. I got to always deal with that,
And so what keeps you from going back to, choosing a life of crime? Because there's so many people who do. There's so many men that when they get out, they generally try. They try really hard to go that straight and narrow path, and they get hit with no jobs, and they revert back to crime.
It's hard for me to understand that because I always got jobs. I mean, I might have to fight for it. You know what I'm saying? I was employed the first 2 months out.
Okay.
So there's always people who's willing to give me a chance. Might have been a lot of doors slammed in my face. Yes, there were, but I always got a job. In fact, driving. The way I got the charter bus job, come on, I used to be executive director at Hudson Valley Community. That's my second job, nonprofit, where I have 15 employees up underneath me, man. But I don't really like nonprofit work because essentially as an executive director, I was a professional beggar. Because I got to go find this money. And I don't like begging. I'm more comfortable earning my money rather than begging for it, It's about to do it for the kids. I was dealing with problem kids, kids at-risk children between the ages of 7 and 14 years old. So that gave me some sense of doing it, but
when those doors were slammed, because you've had a few doors slammed in your face, what kept you from not going back to who you were?
So it wasn't hard because I knew what I begged God to deliver me for, and I can never return. So that's why I don't understand why people, if you beg God to deliver you from this, why would you go back? Because you get some challenges. You know what I'm saying? That's one reason. The other reason is I'm essentially delivered, man, from criminality.
Yeah.
It's not an option. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just not an option. Just like for example, one time I was notorious.
You don't make it an option.
No.
That's the thing.
And just like, one time I thought being a man was to be a whoremonger, a notorious whoremonger. You know what I'm saying? But I'm delivered from that because that's not an option. Can I be tempted with it? Yes. But I'm not.
But you don't make that an option.
Once I stop and think about it, and I always do, you count the cost. I said, nah. It's just not an option. I already know how that's going to end. I already know. I don't want a life of regrets anymore. I got a bank vault of regrets already. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't want to add to that.
Yeah.
So I just want to start making right and proper decisions. And I think that's one of the things of on the authentic and wholesome masculinity is that's what you're about. You know, the righteousness of God lives in me, and I know the grace that's been shown to me, not only by Him but by other people. And why would I trample upon that grace so casually? You know.
So on that note, I wish we had more time, man, because there's a lot more that we can talk
two,
about.
brother.
We're gonna have to do a part 2. So, what's new? Anything new that's going on that you want to let the people know about?
Yeah, so I'm in the process of, I drive charter buses and tractor trailers. I'm in the process. I've always wanted to drive for the entertainment coach and career, because that's a whole different lifestyle. But it seemed like it's a closed environment. I couldn't get in there. But then I found out I knew somebody. Got me. So I'm in the process of, and this is going to elevate my whole tax bracket. You know what I'm saying? So I'm looking forward to it. But even doing that job, not looking for being away from my wife or home all the time, but it's like something we have to do for about a year. So that's what's on the horizon right now.
Congratulations.
This is on the horizon, the Taste of Transformation. I love where this is going. I think it's so important. I'm glad to be a part of it. And the other thing is, me and Roberto, as you know, we was in prison together. We wrote a lot of songs. Roberto Rivera. We wrote all these songs. We knew one day we was going to come out here and record these songs, and we're in the process of doing that now. So I will continue to do the work of helping men to move forward. You know what I'm saying? Of counseling. I was a counselor of men. Men call me at different hours of the day, for some advice. But to help men to be the best version of themselves. My life has purpose. It's meaningful. I've never been more happy, and I'm glad to be a law-abiding, upright citizen. And for those who wrote me off and said, like the judge adjudicated me as being incorrigible. That means that he felt that I had no capacity or no inclination to change. And maybe on my own he was right. But once God got a hold of me, they changed that. So if Michael Love can change, anybody can change. Because I was the one that they wrote off. I was the one that even people in my family said, oh, that's just Michael. He's not going to change. That's just how he is. I was that one. But when you get tired of being sick and tired, and you want better for yourself, and you know that you deserve better, that's when you will see the fruit of transformation manifesting in your life.
And on that note, we will end. Mr. Michael J. Love.
Thank you for
being here, bro.
God bless you. You don't mind if I eat the rest of this Jack Mac, right?
Nah,
I might have to come over and eat some of yours too.
No,
brother.
no, you're not. You're gonna stay on that side of your plate. But we definitely have to do a part 2. So look forward to that, guys.
I do.
Look forward to that, you all. We're gonna do a part 2 because you spoke about purposeness, living a life of purpose, purposefulness, and that's something that I want to dive deeper into.
Well, that's deep right there.
Yeah.
Talking about.
So, Taste of Transformation. We'll see y'all later.